Okay, so okay, so welcome to the virtual space where we get ourselves engaged, right? We get educated, we entertain ourselves in all ramification. So basically, to start with, let me introduce myself. My name is Oluwakemi Odusoya, 2009 graduating set in Pacelli. So I'll be your driver for today. Allow me, yes, I'll be your driver for today, where we are going to be talking about. Are you wondering what I'm talking about? Okay, we're going to be talking about something people don't like to talk about. Yeah, something people at times feel shy of, or some things people don't even understand how to bring it down to younger persons. Yes, I'm talking about SRH, that's sexual reproductive health. That is what we are going to be talking about. And in bid to start this discussion, I would like to say welcome to everyone joining us on this virtual space. Welcome. I promise it's going to be enlightening. It's going to be edutaining, educative, and also entertaining. And you are definitely going to get the best right out of today's program. So please join me as I welcome to the stage. Welcome on stage, a seasoned professional in this discourse. You know, when I talked about the word seasoned professional and I looked at the word sexual reproductive health, yeah, I don't go the gutter way anyways. So we have someone who's going to be telling us everything or some few things we need to know about SRH. Pardon me, I have a bit of cold in case my voice is muffled. So I welcome to the podium Ejiro Okotie, aka Crystal Inspired. Please, a round of applause for her. Please come to welcome.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You can hear me loud and clear, right?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And my humble self, Ejiro Okotie. My set, when did I finish from Pacelli? I finished 98 July. Yes. I finished 98 July, actually. Yes, 98 July. Okay, so I was hoping that we'll have more people in the house, but hopefully other people get to join as we get along. And I like the introduction that Kemi has given, that sexuality. So the first part of my conversation today is really on sexuality, because for me, that's like the foundation. Just to give a brief about myself, I am not a medical doctor, so I need to put that forward first. I am not a medical doctor. I am not a health professional. I am a development professional that has built a career around sexual and reproductive health for about 7 or 8 years. And just very recently, I think last year, 2019, so 2 years ago, I stumbled on the aspect of sexuality, which has caught my interest. And I really think that's an aspect of, because SRH is a component of sexuality. So people have taken a part of a body and abandoned the whole body. And I think the whole, having an understanding of the whole body gives us a better perspective, and it gives us a better tool to deal with all of the other issues that come up as it relates to reproductive health, to sex, and to every other thing surrounding this. So first things first is, like I said, I'm not a medical professional. I just have built a career around this. So I've worked around SRH and HIV and AIDS I've done quite a lot on that, and I've done quite a lot around safe sex, SRH, sexuality education. And now, very recently, like I said, I've started to do work around sexuality and pleasure. Yes, which is not something people like to talk about. So there's a lot of morality around sexuality and sexual and reproductive health. Please, can we mute when we join?
Okay.
So that we don't interrupt the conversation, particularly if you have a noisy background. Just mute as you join. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so I mean, I've set the stage, and so I want us to open our minds to put our religious morality and all of these things aside, because many times when you talk about sexuality and you talk about sex, people are like, they want to spoil us. But really, a lot of these people, they are doing it to, but we don't just want to open up and learn and share experience and learn from each other, because it's only when we share experiences with each other, when we get information, that we're able to do the right thing, that we're able to take the right decisions and make informed choices. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I really hope that there are more spaces, safe spaces, where people can actually be themselves and bear themselves and talk about their sexuality and express their sexuality as much as they can. I really wanted the participants, all of us, to do this presentation together, but we don't seem to be many in the room. But yeah, we can still achieve something. And I want questions to come from us as well as we get along. Please feel free to stop me at any point to ask any question, because I want the questions to drive the conversation. A lot of times for this kind of thing, you don't want to tell people, don't do this, don't do that. It's when people bring up the areas that they need clarification on, then we're able to shed more light, and in that way we learn from each other. That's what I really want this to be. I want it to be a conversation and not really a lecture. So I'm not here to tell us do this or do that. I'll just set I'll kind of like set the stage for the conversation to begin. And I will do that by, first of all, giving us a definition of sexuality. So first, I wanted to even find out from us, when we hear the word sexuality, what comes to our mind? If anybody can just unmute, for those of us that are in the room, if you can unmute and just give me a feedback, so I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself. Hello, am I the only one here?
No. Should I call names?
Please call names. So Valero, are you calling together? Our spirits are working together. Hands down. Answer the question. Answer the question.
That is the year to answer the question. When you hear the word sexuality, what comes to your mind? Okay.
It's over on this color. It just joined.
It's on the call. It's shiny.
And roam away. It cannot be shy. You don't need to be shy. It's actuality talk.
Exactly. Taufik, when you hear the word sexuality, what comes to your mind?
Hey, all these people. Hey, God. Oh, yeah, let's share the grace. Kukuma. Nobody seems to want to talk about this. We have to talk, because I cannot be just talking to myself like that.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is yes, so that is me.
Okay, so you want to answer our question, that when you hear the word sexuality, what comes to mind?
I think I want to try. I hope I will not be wrong.
There's no wrong or right answer. Mm-hmm.
When I hear about sexuality, is man and woman having sex.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Part of it. All right. Thanks. There's no wrong or right answer. So just everybody just say what you think. Can we have one more person? At least when you hear the word sexuality, what comes to your mind?
Hello, Ejiro. How are you? Good evening. And good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So this is Ayola. Now, when I
Okay.
hear sexuality, what comes to mind revolves around the knowledge, the experience, and sometimes society's perceived or ascribed views and rules around sexuality and sexuality around the issue generally.
Okay. So you've talked about
Knowledge,
societal perception, you've talked about knowledge, you've talked about experience, right?
experience, yes.
You've talked about roles
Yes.
around the topic itself, sexuality. Okay, thank you. That's quite comprehensive. I appreciate. And Auntie Kudi, thank you as well. So I'm going to give a definition that was provided, a working definition that was provided by the World Health Organization in 2004. And it simply says that sexuality is like the central part of being human throughout life. So sexuality kind of encompasses your entire life. And you'll see how. So it says that it's not just like a central part of you, but it cuts across your entire life, right? And it covers issues around gender identity, and roles, which is what Ayo talked about, gender identity and roles. So in terms of, I'm just going to kind of be explaining each of the points as we get along, so that we don't have to go back and forth. So it says that sexuality is your entire life, right? And it spans from childhood till whenever you die. So all throughout your life cycle, sexuality plays a central role in it. And it covers gender identity and roles. For gender identity and roles, here we're talking about what makes me a man and what makes you a woman. And then what are those societal roles that have been ascribed to you as a man and to me as a woman? So that is very critical when you talk about sexuality. That forms a core part of the discourse around sexuality. So in Africa, for instance, in Nigeria, for instance, you see that they'll say, oh, when men can easily sit down and talk about sexual experiences or their sexual needs or whatever it is around their sexuality. And nobody, will criticize them because it's a man's world, right? But if a woman sits and starts saying, oh my God, I really just want to have sex right now. Oh, I had sex with a guy yesterday and it was also, they'll say, oh, she's so loose. So there are these roles that society has ascribed. A woman should be conservative, should be, modest. A woman should be, but a man is free to, be expressive. So those roles shape how men and women experience sexuality, how men and women express their sexuality. So gender identity and roles is one part of sexuality. Another aspect of it is sexual orientation. And of course, sexual orientation is really about what appeals to what sexual experience appeals to you. So you have heterosexuals who are people who are attracted to the opposite sex. You have homosexuals who are attracted to same sex. You have bisexuals who are attracted to both sexes, male and female sexes. You have other orientation, BDSM, something long name, BDSM. You have those ones. And very recently, they are beginning to want to add pedophiles as a sexual orientation. But for now, it is not counted amongst it. But so it's really about what appeals to a person's, what appeals to a human being when it relates to sex. So what sexual experience or who attracts such a person. So that's sexual orientation. You have eroticism. This one, people don't talk about it so much. More around passion, more around pleasure. If you remember, I said I talked about writing my dissertation around sexuality and pleasure because, you know, in Nigeria, I came to understand that a lot of people have done projects around sexual and reproductive health, access to health. But before a woman gets pregnant, something happens now. There's something that, you know, put that pregnancy there. But nobody really talks about that, you know. And I thought like that's a conversation that we need to, that space, that discussion, we need to open it up, let people begin to really talk about what really appeals to me sexually. What's that thing that would turn me on or that will make me feel like a woman or feel, you know, sexually like a sexual being. And that's at the heart of eroticism. Those passions, those things that would trigger whatever experience that you want to have. It's at the heart of sexuality. Here you go. After eroticism is just one arm of it, and then you have pleasure. So in terms of pleasure, I mean, in my dissertation, I was looking at how is it possible that pleasure actually contributes to building the self-esteem of an individual, be it a male or female? How does one feel when they are able to tell a sexual partner, I like it when you do this to me, or I like it when you do that to me? Does it change anything? Is there power relations in pleasure? You know, and all of this, and how does it even impact on a human being generally, from an internal point of view to an external point of view? You know, does it even from that being able to, does it contribute to my negotiation power for me to be able to say yes or no? Does it give me power over my body? You know, to be able to tell to be able to tell the person, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. So that conversation around pleasure is a very critical one that we don't have in this part of the world as well. Like I said, because society has ascribed specific roles to specific genders. And in a way, those tradition and culture has put more of the power in the hands of some gender over the other. So in having this conversation, men and women are able to, you know, begin to even explore themselves to say, what appeals to me? What gives me pleasure? What do I really want? How do I want to use my body? How do I want someone else, you know, to have access and, you know, make use of my own body as well? So I said that sexuality cuts across your entire life from childhood to the day you die, and it comprises of gender identity and roles. It comprises of sexual orientation. It comprises of eroticism. It comprises of pleasure, which is what I just finished explaining. Intimacy. This is one that is a bit lacking. Not too many people really understand what this is. A lot of times it's just having that deeper connection with an individual. Yeah, and you can share intimacy with a person and not be sexually involved with that person. It's just also around how well you are able to understand your sexuality and express it, you know, to the best of your ability. So that's what determines how you're able to connect with certain people at different levels. You can be intimate with an individual, yes, and have sexual relations. But again, it's not all relationships, intimate relationships that have sexual undertone in it. So intimacy is just having that deeper connection with a person. It can be at the spiritual level. It can be at a physical level, which is the sexual intercourse part I'm talking about. But you can connect with a person intimately at a spiritual level, and doesn't have anything to do with using your bodies. Yeah. So intimacy is a part of your sexuality. And that's why people that do a lot of this yoga and a lot of meditation, they're able to really get into their innermost being and connect at that level. So that's the kind of intimacy that we're talking about. You can even build some level of intimacy with yourself, with your innermost self. If you do a lot of meditation, you can build that kind of thing and get to that level. Anyway, okay, so let's go on. Intimacy, and then we have reproduction. So this is just one arm of what sexuality comprises of. It comprises of gender identity and roles. It comprises of sexual orientation. It comprises of intimacy, pleasure, eroticism. It comprises of reproduction, which is the reproductive health that we always focus on. We always focus on just reproduction, but before reproduction, there are so many other things. And it's time for us to begin to have the conversation around those other things, because I think that it really shapes what happens at this point of reproduction. Okay. Then going forward, it says sexuality is also experienced and expressed in our thoughts. Remember, I talked about eroticism as part of your thoughts and fantasies. They are very closely tied to eroticism and pleasure. So what you think about shapes how you feel, right? What you fantasize about also may determine the experience, your experience, regardless of whatever that experience is, but how we feel about ourselves, what we think about ourselves. So if you find somebody that always has negative thoughts, of course, they will only assume negative things. I say, oh, that person is just too pessimistic. That's an aspect of sexuality, right? And then people fantasize. Everybody has got a gift of fantasy, and it's probably stronger with women because we know how to daydream a lot. But then it's there, and we can use it. You can build a certain experience even before you get that experience. You build it in your fantasy, and when it comes, it's probably just as beautiful or not. But I think it also helps you to be able to determine what you want out of whatever it is you want to do. So your thoughts, your fantasies, your desires, they all are part of your sexuality. And then your belief is also part of your sexuality. So I look at this, I would hold on a bit on belief, because a lot of times when we talk about sexuality, when we talk about sex, people say, oh, this is not the kind of conversation Christians should be having. All right, we are adults, right? And we decide to do whatever we choose to do. And the reason a lot of our decisions stem from our belief system, what we believe in. It determines the kinds of choices that we make. Personally, I have my own idea or my own perspective or my own school of thought about sex. But that is not to say that for those people that choose to or not to have it, it's your life, it's your choice. And that choice is based on something that you believe. That's the reason why you're doing it or you're not doing it. So it doesn't, on both sides of the coin, for me, if I'm speaking from a professional point of view, nobody is wrong. If you're having sex, it's not wrong because it's what you believe and you're an adult, you want to do it. If you don't want to have sex as well, it's not wrong. It's what you believe, it's what you want to do. So that's to tell you that belief plays a very critical role. Again, it's part of our sexuality, but we don't know that, we've placed so much emphasis on just only sexual intercourse, which is just a very tiny part of our sexuality. It's just in its entirety. Okay, so you have belief systems, you have values, you have attitudes, you have behaviors. So what values do you hold there? When it comes to my body, when it comes to me as an individual, what shapes the values? I talked about belief systems shaping your choices. Yeah, so what you place value on also shapes your choice. If I place value on let's say chastity, I might say I might choose not to do certain things, not because it's bad, probably because for me it doesn't fit, it doesn't align with my own values. So that's important. And your beliefs and your values shapes your behavior. So what you believe in, what you place value on determines how you behave. It determines the kind of attitudes that you develop. So you see how it's like a house you're building, you're putting blocks upon blocks. We started from gender identity and roles. We moved on to sexual orientation. When we talked about intimacy, reproduction, we talked about eroticism and pleasure. And now we are talking about our thoughts, our fantasies, our desires, our belief, values, how all of this shape the attitudes that we bring to life and the behaviors that we engage in. So that's the reason why they said sexuality is at the core of our being. It's at this, it's the centrality of your human existence. And I hope that we kind of have a clearer understanding of what sexuality is now. So when we hear sexuality outside tomorrow, you're not just only be thinking of man and woman doing something in the backyard. It's not only that. It's so many other things. Okay, it's me just fooling around. Okay, so I talked about beliefs, behaviors, practices, and roles. So, and relationships. So it determines who you decide to be with, who you don't want to be with. who you decide to share your body with, who you don't want to share your body with, who you decide to build an intimate relationship with, who you do not want to build an intimate relationship, who you want to even build friendship. So relationships a lot of times not only, romantic relationship. I can have a platonic relationship with a friend. A lot of these different elements in sexuality is what will shape my decision around the kind of people I choose to build relationships with, or how I manage the relationship that I'm in. It might even be family relationships, my siblings, my cousins, my extended family, how I behave towards them, my attitude towards them. It will be shaped by my thoughts, my fantasies, my desires, my belief system, my values, what I hold there, the practices. Sometimes it might be religious practice, it might be personal development practices, it might just be, different things. Those different things shape who we are as human beings. It shapes who we are as persons. Okay. So now all of these different things now, we don't live in isolation. We live in a world. So this belief system, values, our practices, gender identity and roles, they are things that have been created by society. I know Ayo mentioned societal expectation and knowledge. So these different things that we talked about earlier on, sexual orientation, some people, today they are gay, they are homosexuals, not because they were born homosexuals. Like this very popular gospel artist, Donnie McClurkin, he was abused by his uncle, as a child when he was 8 years old. And that's how he kind of just developed an affection for men, not necessarily because he was born gay, okay? So the different behavior that we project is usually influenced by something. So that which also forms part of our sexuality. So here, part of this definition says sexuality can also be influenced by the interaction of biological factors, psychological factors, economic factors, political, cultural factors, ethical factors. What is right and what is wrong? What do we consider right? How do we define what is right and wrong? Who defines them for us? Sometimes our religion, legal. So I talked about pedophiles. Although some people say that I am attracted to children, that's my own sexual orientation, but doesn't make it right. So there are legal implications around that, around the world. At least for now, it's not yet has not yet been approved. So for now, that in itself is illegal. Same-sex marriage is illegal in Nigeria, even though some people have a right to say I am attracted to the opposite. In Nigeria, if you do it, you go to jail. So there's always that legal aspect as well that shapes the sexuality of people. Then there are also historical factors, religious factors, and spiritual factors. All of these plenty things is what makes up sexuality. So do we agree now when we say that sexuality is the centrality of human existence? Does anyone agree?
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Hi, it's Victoria Orwari. I've been listening to the talk, and I'm sorry if I came in a noisy manner. I was using my mobile phone, and it was just a little bit too complicated for me. I really appreciate you talking about this in this forum, because I think it's really important that we get to understand sexuality as it relates to us as human beings. But I think an aspect that we need to draw attention to is also the infantization of disabled people.
Yeah.
One of the societal expectations is that disabled people can't or shouldn't have sex, because if they do, they might hurt themselves. And it is a mindset that a lot of non-disabled people carry, even to a point of, even when it comes to a disabled person reproducing, it's like it's perceived to be the wrong thing for the person to do. So there could be some awareness around that aspect of it and how that might impact a blind person's attitude to sex and their own sexuality and their inability to explore what their sexuality is.
Yes, I totally agree with you. That's very, very correct. Yeah, so part of this is I always say that I think I developed interest more around the sexuality discourse because, like I said at the beginning, that it's like the foundation of everything. If I have an understanding of who I am and what I represent, then I think it's easy for me to be able to navigate some of those expectations, some of those ways that society has shaped how I should be and how I should express myself as a sexual being. You know, in Nigeria, for instance, sometimes you wear certain kinds of clothes and people say, oh, why is she dressed like that? That's how I feel like expressing my sexuality. Like, if I feel really sexual about myself, sometimes you wear certain clothes and you're like, oh, I feel so sexy. That's how I feel at that point in time. And it's okay to be that way. It's okay to express that. So there are other, perception that society has around sexuality, like people, disabled people or blind people in this case are not supposed to have sex. So you are asexual. And when you have those kind of conversations, they're like, you should be praying for your life, you should be praying for your healing, and not to be talking or thinking about sex. And a disabled woman goes to the hospital with pregnancy and they say, who did this to you? God will punish that person because you don't believe that I have a right to, have sex and decide to have a child. So yeah, we cannot, that's why I said the last part of our sexuality definition says that the interaction of these other factors, economic, social, cultural, political, they influence how people experience and express their sexuality. So it's something that we need to pay attention to. Very important. Okay, thank you for that contribution. Okay, so I've just said that sexuality is about who you really are, and having a clear understanding of these different elements that make up your sexuality kind of helps you to define your experiences and define how you express yourself. It's about who you are, and it's about how you feel, about other people. So I said, in this place, I said about using my body, I must ask, it's about how do I feel, rather than how people feel about me. A lot of times for us as blind persons, because people believe that we should be a certain way, we should be presented in a certain way. And that kind of just defines how we respond, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be more about me. It's me first, how I feel about myself, how I feel about my body, and not how people feel about me. I shouldn't allow what people think about me. So it's finding that balance in ourselves, that's what will help us to be able to, move from this place where we're talking about what shapes us, what we want to do, to this issue of sex in itself, which is what I'm going to talk a bit more about now. I'm going to talk a bit more about it. I'm going to pick that out because, like I said at the beginning, we don't like to talk about that. And a lot of times we make mistakes because we don't have information, and we don't sometimes don't know what is right or what is wrong, and because of that, and because we're too shy or too ashamed to talk about it, people take advantage of us, or we make wrong choices, as the case may be. Okay, so is there any question for now?
I don't have a question, but I think one more thing that I thought to add is sex is actually one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is an essential part of human existence, in the same level as shelter, shelter, food,
social belonging,
social belonging, and all of that. Yeah,
very true. And that's the reason why we always and should talk about it, because most times we just focus on access to health, which access to health is good, right? But again, there's something that if I take care of myself, I might not need to access health, as the case may be. Okay, so one thing, there are some key questions that I wrote here, and the first question is, am I being safe with my body? Have I ever felt unsafe to express my feelings or desires? And I think like these are, I would really love people to give me their thoughts on this question, on these questions. Am I being safe with my body? Have I ever felt unsafe to express my desires, my feelings or my desires? So can some people just probably share if they feel comfortable to do that? Hello, am I talking to myself, please?
Yep. I think I'm going to help you to pass the mic
Okay.
round. So, yeah, don't feel free. So the question once again is, have you ever felt safe, right?
Am
Or
I
either
okay?
safe or
We're
unsafe.
listening to
Okay, I think
you.
someone. Yeah,
Okay,
Mr.
somebody
Diola.
unmuted their mic.
No, I just wanted to let her know she's not talking to herself.
I know I'm not talking to myself. Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
so I said, am I being safe with my body? Have I ever felt unsafe to express my feelings or my desires?
No, answer them. Manila.
Sorry. Hello. What you say? Okay, so nobody is responding. So
Can I suggest maybe you might want to rephrase the question a different way, because I have a sense that people might not be responding because it means that they have to reveal aspects of their story that they may not feel comfortable revealing in the forum. And I was wondering maybe if you might rephrase the question as, what does safety mean to me?
okay, so what does safety mean to me in relation to my feelings or my desires, probably? Or generally, what does safety mean to us?
Okay, so for me, I can say safety is something something secure, or something out of danger, or something that is not harmful. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other person?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, for me, safety is a state of calmness. That's a state of confidence, a state of being sure, being comfortable about certain things. So that is safety for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So being sure, being calm. Yes.
Well, for me, safety in this regard will involve that consciousness, that awareness that, oh, I am protected from any harm. That means I have done what I'm supposed to do. And in the context of what we're doing, the other person, what we're talking about rather, the other person, my partner in this case, has also taken measures to ensure that I'm both protected from any harm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, okay.
I think safety for me means being in control of what does and does not happen to me. So being in control of what does and does not happen to me.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Yeah, and I think there are different dimensions that have come out of this this question of what safety means to us. Because again, when we talk about sex, it's safety is like a core aspect of it. It's it's a relationship where you are at your most vulnerable, and you just really want to feel safe in that state, right? As a blind person, of course, there are certain, first of all, maybe the nature of your disability already poses some kind of limitation. So you want to be, in that headspace where you feel safe with whoever you're with. You feel safe even in the things, in the different experiences that you may want to have. And like I mentioned before, I also think that a core part of that conversation is pleasure. What appeals to me? What do I like? Or how do I, being able to decide what will be pleasurable to me and to the person, of course. And it shouldn't be a one-way flow, So I think that there are, when it comes to sex, and of course, sexuality in this case, because I'm putting them side by side. Sex, like I have said before, is an element of sexuality, but I'm going to put it side by side because, again, sexuality is so many other things, like I have said. And in terms of even expressing our feelings or desires or fantasies about a person or something, it's also, expressing your sexuality, and it feeds into this whole experience of sex, So there are certain factors that I think that kind of limits us as blind persons. I'm a blind woman myself, so of course some of these things I probably can relate with going on, through different phases of my life. And I just listed a few of them. And one of it is shame, because you're blind, most times people feel you shouldn't have sex. People feel, oh, they're not having sex. I mean, I talked about how I started my work as a coordinator for an HIV/AIDS project. And you find people saying, oh, you don't need to teach them how to use condom now. Do they have sex? And that's the general perception that people have. Even some blind people themselves feel, I don't need to learn about how to use a condom. I'm blind now, I cannot have HIV. And it takes a lot of education to be able to say, you need to know these things. It's okay to have sex, it's not a bad thing. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And we should also not shame people, for being vocal about themselves and their sexual lives. We shouldn't shame people. We know how to judge people in this part of the world and say, oh, that person is loose. I've heard a lot of comments like, oh, blind girls are loose, blind girls are cheap, because of course that's however I choose to express my sexuality is my business. It shouldn't, make people give me labels. And sometimes some of those labels can be really shaming. I also think another part of this word shame when it comes to sex and sexuality is our bodies. Some people, society has made us believe that only the slim, flat tummy, lanky bodies are the ideal body. So if you have a big wobbly tummy and really on the big side, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
A call
Yes,
is coming
we
in.
can.
Okay, so when you have that big, or rubber body, people just feel, oh, and that has impacted on how, particularly women, it has limited them in really expressing themselves as much as they would want to. I have a family member who said, despite the fact that she's married, her husband has never really seen her, like, she doesn't feel comfortable like standing fully naked before her husband, because he always has one negative comment to make. Oh, your thighs are so big. Oh, your tummy is so big. Oh, this is so big. And she was narrating a story that there was a day she was in her room and she just laid down on her bed naked, and he stepped into her room. I was like, wow, your body is so fine. She said, oh, of course you won't see it, because whenever you happen to look, It's only the bad things, the big stomach and the big thighs that you ever see. So you cannot even appreciate the body. And I think that that's a problem in itself. And a lot of people, so this might not even just be only for women. I'm sure there are even men also that may struggle with that body shaming. We have that a lot. And that restricts us, And I think that also sometimes it's what's up for women, because we're very particular about our body. So it shapes, it feeds into your self-esteem. So sometimes you just find somebody and say, oh, at least I've seen one person that managed to even say they like me. And that way, it makes it now, it puts you in a vulnerable place, because sometimes you might not even be able to negotiate to say, okay, can you use a condom? Negotiate safe sex. We talked about safety at the beginning. So at what point do I have the power to say, can I protect myself? Can you use a condom, or can you not use, or can you do this? Can we, do this? And somebody or somebody suggests a kind of sexual activity that I don't feel comfortable with, but simply because at this point, he's the only one that has found me attractive. I don't have a choice to say something, to turn him down, or to refuse, or to turn her down, because I have found this is the only person that has managed to accept me the way I am. So I think that shaming is a very core limitation to how people express and experience sex and their sexuality in general. Another major one, and this one really this one relates to us, influences from family and also cultural influences as well. So because we are blind, many of us have had the experience where parents are holding on to us so tightly, and even at maybe 35, they still think that you should be under their rule, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. There are so many rules around you. They don't just respect the fact that you're an adult and you can choose for yourself. All you need to do is just educate me, give me the right information, and just leave me to be able to trust that I can take my decisions and make either the right, I can make the right decision. I mean, just give me even the room to take that step. But many times a lot of us have had this parents holding on to us so tightly. My friend in Delta, he moved from the north to Delta State to do his youth service, and his parents packed and followed him to Delta, and he quietly went to rent another apartment, furnished the apartment, and moved out of the house where he was for his parents, and moved there and placed a ban that they must, on no account must they step foot in his house, and that's how after like a year he was able to get married and everything. So I mean, we've had this kind of extreme situations, and then also cultural issues, around disability, around what we should or shouldn't do. And it's even worse off for women, because they say, oh, you're not supposed to, as a woman, you're not supposed to tell a man that you need him to do this. They say, oh, you're now spoiled. Where are you learning all these things? Who is teaching you? And sometimes women just being vocal about what they want leads to domestic violence or gender-based violence, where they are being beaten by their partners, to say, how can you say I should put my leg here? How did you learn it? Who is teaching you? But probably that's just her coming out of herself and trying to really, explore her sexuality. Okay. Another part is comparing ourselves. I think this is very closely tied to the point of shaming, where we just feel we're not good enough in certain ways. And yeah, for us as blind people as well, or probably because of our disability, probably because of so many other things, our self-esteem has been deflated or dented in different ways. And many times we just tend to compare ourselves, like, oh, if I was sighted now, maybe he or she will find me more attractive. I'm probably not good enough in this, or I'm not doing this well because I'm blind, or just because, so there are always those different things that we put to say, in comparing ourselves with other people, I say you're not good at this and that, and that's the reason why you can, and then you deprive yourself of that full life, that full enjoyment that you're supposed to have, simply because you set certain standards, or society itself has even set certain standards for you, and you're struggling to live up to them. But again, when you have a very good understanding of your sexuality, other aspects of you now that is not sex, you are able to now be grounded in yourself and take decisions that you think are best for you and are safe for you. Okay, poor sex education. This one is key. many of us, I mean, I've had conversation with a few people, and somebody was telling me once that, you know, that some people, particularly if you're born blind, because there's what they call visual learning. So there are some things that you just see and you know about them. I'll give you an example. My sister said, oh, she did a procedure where they put the camera into into her lungs. And I said, so they have to cut your stomach. And she said, they did not cut my stomach. Now my lungs is around towards the upper part, under my breast, like towards the upper part. I'm like, really? I thought your lungs was inside your stomach. And she started laughing. You know, and her husband was like, oh, there's what you call visual learning, you know, so you might have seen it in a textbook without any teacher really telling you this where the lungs is, but she's blind and she probably has never seen, you know, a biology, human anatomy where they drew the lungs, and maybe nobody ever really told her. So we have those kind of things. We have people who do not know what to do when it comes to sex, like they are clueless. Like somebody was telling me that, oh, a guy said he doesn't even know how to insert his penis into a vagina, you know, and we can laugh about it, but that's the reality. Somebody told me, a 27-year-old lady who stays in the South, said she doesn't even know what a penis looks like. She's never seen one, and she just imagines in her head what it looks like. So there are a lot of us that are like that, you know, and if she wasn't talking to the right person, probably I might have talked to someone and say, oh, let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you how they used to put it inside the body, you know, and they might even just take advantage of that, her ignorance, you know. So it's important for us to get information. It's important for us to understand the different sexual activities and, you know, the impact, if it's what we really want to do before we go into it. So we're able to negotiate, we're able to, you know, tell our partners, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, or this is what I like, this is what I don't like. You know, I really think that every human being has a right to pleasure, to sexual pleasure. Every human being has a right to. Nobody should be deprived of it, and it only comes from a place of knowledge. You know, you're as powerful as what you know. That's my own one of my philosophies. Okay. So sometimes overtaking an abusive experience. So some persons may have been abused, sexually abused at one point or the other, and that shapes their experience going forward. A lot of times, or majority of the times, people don't think it's important to deal with those kind of issues, particularly maybe if it's an abuse at childhood or even at adulthood. You just like move on. They just say move on, you know. But again, you find out that some of those kind of people do not maybe enjoy sex, or they do not even want to build relationships with people. You know, we said sexuality is not only about sex, right? It's also about relationships. It's about intimacy. So I might even have sex with you and not have that intimate connection with you. It happens like that. So it's you know, addressing those issues. If you've been abused or you've had any of those kind of negative experience, it actually determines how one feels about themselves and how one feels. I mean, for someone that may have been abused, there's also the possibility that they come down with low self-esteem. They don't feel good enough. Those other points that we talked about, because of the shame, you know, if I come out, they're going to blame me. And then they call into themselves. Maybe I'm not good enough. Why was he me? Why did he have to be me apart from every other person? And sometimes it's like, okay, you find some of those people, they go to the extreme and they're just everywhere. They will sleep with any and everything because they're trying to find an outlet to deal with that thing. So it's important, if you have, or you know, anyone that may have had a negative experience or being sexually abused, you help them find help, or you help them, you know, agree to deal with it, either by getting professional help or really, you know, going through the process of healing and healing properly so that they can be able to shape a good relationship going on. We've talked about body objectification, very closely tied to shame. What you think people, you know, how you think people think you should be on the big side. And over time, you know, I've heard people, oh, you're too fat. Yes. And, you know, I came to a point where I told myself, whether I'm fat or not, I love myself the way I am. And I talk about myself so much that sometimes you'll be asking, is she remaining somewhere else? Or is this everything? Because I get to know that I have to love myself for who I am, love my body, regardless of how it looks. And I think that we need to get to that point where we love our bodies for whatever it is or however it looks. We love our bodies and we cherish it. And it's the love that we give to ourselves that, you know, it's the value you place on yourself that someone out there would place on you. If you look down and you talk down on yourself, there's a high possibility that the people that will come around will look down on you and talk down on you. But when people see that you love your body for what it is, then automatically they don't have a choice. They just love your body for what it is. So Gary Blair says we must inspect what we expect and accept what we accept. So before we accept anything into our lives, we have to assess it. Is this what I really want? You know, Victoria talked about, you know, safety being able to choose for what they want or what they do not want. So before I accept, you know, to go into a relationship or to go into a sexual relationship with someone, or to express my sexuality in a certain way or not, in whatever way, you know, is that what I really want? You know, is that what I want to do? It is key, you know, and we have to consistently, you know, do that assessment. So for us, for me, I would say that sexuality is really about balancing your life, you know, and I must be able to ascertain who is in control. I think Victoria also mentioned that issue of, you know, safety being in control. Who is in control? Is it me that is in control of my body and my life? Or is it society or my family that is, you know, dictating to me and determining, you know, what I should and shouldn't be doing? So sexuality is about finding that balance and, you know, taking charge of your life, taking charge and owning your sexuality, owning your sex life, you know, however it may be. It reflects in every aspect of your life. It reflects in every aspect of your life. I told you I did a study last year about sexuality and its link to pleasure. And it was so interesting to see how, you know, being able to negotiate for what an individual wants in a sexual relationship fed into how they felt about themselves, you know, in terms of their self-esteem, their self-perception about themselves, you know, how they were able to even project that self-perception into their everyday life, into their work life, into their academics. You know, so it is so important. It is so important for us to be at the driver's seat when it comes to our sexuality, when it comes to our sexual life. It's so important for us to be in control. So an aspect of it, okay, and I think that we must also be able to voice what we want as much as possible, you know, because it's how you, it's really, so if I'm to put it in one word, it's very closely tied to, you know, self-awareness. Everything that I've talked about is very closely tied to self-awareness. So I want to talk briefly about STIs, because I think somebody mentioned that. And if we're looking at safety around sex and sexuality, STIs are things that we probably know about, you know, but again, it's how do we interpret that in our everyday life, and how do we use that to keep ourselves, to protect ourselves, and to protect the people around us as well. You know, sex education is important. I know that particularly for us, most times when you go to schools and you say you want to do sexuality education, people say, oh, you want to come and spoil our children. But because of disability, a lot of times some of these children get to school when they are teenagers, and hormones are everywhere. So we cannot say that we're not going to teach them or tell them, give them information about it, and leave them to make, you know, informed decisions. So and I think that even for us as adults as well, some of those limiting factors we mentioned earlier on kind of holds us back from even getting information that can help us, you know, that can help us protect ourselves, that can help us take the right decisions or do the right thing when it comes to sexual activities, or even in keeping ourselves safe for as we express ourselves, our sexuality, as the case may be. So generally, infections, sexually transmitted infections are basically infections that are transmitted via sexual intercourse or via sexual activities, as the case may be. And they usually have, different impacts, economic impacts and social impacts. It's a major public health issue, and I mean, it's at the root of so many illnesses that people have these days, So usually they are categorized into three groups. You have sexually transmitted infections that are caused by bacteria. You have sexually transmitted infections that are caused by fungi. You have sexually transmitted infections that are caused by viruses, viral infections. For the first two categories, they could be treated, right? But for the last, most viral infections are only managed. We can only manage them. And a couple of them, very common ones that we know of. We know of syphilis. I might not be able to break them into what categories they fall under, either bacterial or viral, and all that. But I'm just going to list a few very common ones that we know of. Gonorrhea, you have chlamydia, you have candida, you have general herpes, you have this one is hard, this name is serious, pubic lice, you have HPV, human papilloma virus. Those ones are usually they cause cervical cancer, transmitted from men to women during from men to women during sexual intercourse. Pelvic inflammatory disease, PID. Yeah, and yeah, there's so many of them. Genital warts. I mentioned chlamydia earlier on. Yeah, and so there's so many of them, and maybe I should just touch a bit on some signs and symptoms that we can take note of, that may be things that that would, like, if you have an idea of some of these things, then you know that, okay, maybe I need medical attention, or maybe I just need to do a checkup to just be sure that I'm safe. I didn't mention HIV. So HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, that's also a viral infection. That's more or less like one of the most popular that we know about. And so general, okay, so at this point, who just joined? Okay, so at this point, do we have any questions before we go into symptoms and signs and symptoms? Are we all good? Are there questions? The dead silence again. Hello? Do we have questions so far? Hello? Okay, so
Hello.
do I just carry on? Okay, are there questions?
Okay, let me ask a question.
Okay.
The question is a funny one. I want to know if you are enjoying the lecture you are giving us.
I am.
Okay, so just carry on.
I am. I love to talk about sexuality and anything around sexuality. I love to talk about it. So I am. I'm doing two things at the same time. I'm talking and I'm listening to my computer. So maybe that's why it sounds like I'm disconnected at some point, but I am. And I hope that we're all enjoying the session as well. I really wanted it to be engaging. I wanted people to ask questions, and then we can and then we can shed more light on those and get more information. I usually prefer that kind of presentation rather than just doing like I'm giving a lecture, because I feel like the room is really quiet. But anyways. Okay, so do I just carry on since I assume that there are no questions?
I wanted to say something about, you talked a bit about sexual abuse and things like that. And
yeah.
I wanted to say that statistics actually does show that there's a higher likelihood for people with disabilities to be victims of abuse because of the lack of knowledge around safety and all the issues around self-esteem that can be caused by the treatment they have received when they were growing up. And I think that's why it's really important to kind of talk about safety and self-worth and the ability to say no if the environment does not feel safe.
Sure. Yeah, and I also think like very closely tied to that is it's economical, because some people are forced to remain in abusive situations simply because maybe the abuser is their financer, the abuser is the one that puts food on their table. So how do you go to report the person that gives you food, or the person that puts clothes on your back, or the person that pays your fees, or the person that puts a roof over your head? So those issues are there, and we find even women with disabilities dealing with those. So I've had the opportunity of talking to some organizations that do work around GBV, and I said, a core part of this conversation is actually providing economic empowerment, because when people are empowered, when people have economic empowerment, it's easy to walk away, because you know that somehow you would survive. But where you don't have a means of survival, then sometimes you have to just deal with it. But again, some people don't even know what is a right touch and what is a wrong touch. That's why I always say that for me, sexuality education is like the entry point to dealing with issues around GBV. Because if I have a full understanding of my body, how my body works, and what makes me me, I think I will have some level of negotiating power. I'll have some level of assertiveness to be able to say, I don't want this. Because a lot of times, most persons who have been abused, the abuser leverages on the fact that they are weak and they can't respond, and because of that, they pry on them and also we have to, of course, like you said, help people, visual, blind and partially sighted persons, including women and girls, build their self-esteem, get that assertiveness, be able to, say something. Because if you want to touch me in a certain way and I say no, then you know that I'm aware and I know what kind of touch is not comfortable. And I mean, you probably would have to devise another means to be able to do that to me. And I have the confidence to. If I cannot talk to anybody in my house, I can get to school and tell my teacher that, oh, this person is doing this to me. Yeah, so it's our responsibility to keep talking about this. And that's why I say we need to put morality aside and we need to really start talking about all of these issues, because it's important. We need to put all these, you spoil the children, you teach them, you put ideas in their head. And not putting ideas in their head, it's better they have the ideas and they're able to use it when they need to defend themselves than they don't have that idea, they don't have that information, and then somebody comes and takes advantage of them. Okay, thank you for that contribution. So I probably will just move on. So in terms of talking about signs and symptoms of sexually transmitted infections in men, generally, these are just a few of them. Like I said, I'm not a medical doctor. Some just general signs. There might be wounds, like open sores or rash around the penis. Discharge, this is usually really common amongst men and women. Pain, burning feeling during urination, swelling of the testicles or pain around the testicles, fever, feeling of illness, Then in women, discharge are usually like smelly, thick discharge from the vagina is common. Pain lower abdomen is common as well. Pain during sexual intercourse is also common for, so this is not an exhaustive list, it's just a few points there. Obviously, so many others. Abnormal irregular bleeding from the vagina, abnormal swelling from the genitals, fever and feeling of illness, you know. So these are just a few signs and symptoms. And I always advocate that as much as possible, if we can get regular general medical checkup, is always very important. So I'll share. Oh, can this person mute, please? Okay, thank you. So was it 2 weeks ago? I wasn't feeling well, and then I went to the hospital and I was having abdominal pain, and they said, oh, let's just do a scan. And they did scan and everything, and the lady was like, oh, we can see a fluid something somewhere. I'm like, fluid care, you know. And they said, okay, let's run some other tests, you know. And they ran other tests, and I mean, those tests came out clean, and I was able to ask questions, you know. And I think that another very important thing for us is when we go to the hospital and they just give us diagnosis, we have to be able to ask questions to say, why is this thing like this? What would be the cause of, or this or that, you know? Because in that case, for instance, the lady was like, oh, there's a fluid in your uterus somewhere, and it looks like sign of PID, which is pelvic inflammatory disease. And I said, what is the cause of it? She was like, oh, okay, and there's sexual intercourse, there's this and this. And she gave me different things, you know, and I started telling her, I said, okay, I think this one is out of it. I think this one is out of it. I think this one is out of it. Maybe this is what it is, you know. But then by the time we did other tests, it wasn't PID, you know. So you need to ask questions, because in asking those doctors questions, they're able to know what you do. Again, was it 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, again, I did test, and they said, oh, you have urinary tract infection. And I said, oh, what causes it, you know? And they said, oh, holding urine for too long is one of the things that causes it. Sometimes sexual intercourse causes it as well. I said, oh, so if I hold my urine for long, this part of what, and I used to do it a lot. I used to hold my urine a lot then, you know. So when we ask questions, when we go to the hospital, then we're able to get information. Again, I realized that even medical doctors are not exactly trained to give us sexuality information when we need them. A lot of times they feel very uncomfortable. And I think it's also this idea that a person with a disability, a blind person, shouldn't be having sex, you know. So they just assume that you don't need that information. And unless you ask, they probably might not give you any information around sex or infections or anything like that. They might not give you any information. So you have to ask, because you cannot assume that you don't need that information. And sometimes we by ourselves, we reinforce some of those negative stereotypes that they have. I think I'm going to end here, and I'm just going to say that in all of it, sexuality forms the core of your existence, like I said before, and we need to embrace our sexuality. We have to be comfortable in ourselves. We have to love ourselves for who we are, and that way you get people around you to love you for who you are. You have to define and shape your own experience and not be ashamed to express yourself, because we are all sexual beings, and we are, because I have breath flowing through my nostrils, I am entitled, it's my right, you know, to express my sexuality to the best of my ability, however I deem fit, right? And in the safest way possible. So I would simply say, stay safe and keep being you in every way that you can. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Please, who is Mike? Who is this person? I keep unmuting you and you keep unmute them. You know, you keep on unmuting your mic. Why? Kemi, are you there?
And it's not like they want to ask a question.
Kemi, is Kemi there? Okay, I guess maybe she has a bad network. So please, if you have any question, just use the raised hand option and I'll see you and call you to unmute. Some people's backgrounds are too noisy. Please, any question, could you use the raised hand, option? Okay, I want to believe this is Pastor Goke Aroshegbe with the 75 whatever. Please, sir, kindly unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, good evening. I hope you all can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I want to
Well, your network is bad, or is it mine?
big thank you to Ejiro's presentation. My network is bad.
Okay,
ahead,
it's better
sir.
now. It's better now.
Is it better?
Yes, it is.
Hello.
It's better now, sir. Yeah.
It's better now.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to say very big thank you to Ejiro. I followed your presentation. Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm saying that I want to say a very big thank you to Ejiro for online. I was wondering whether she is a specialist.
I'm going to train to be a sex therapist.
I was wondering
The sex counselor. Professor. Your network is bad. We can't hear.
Well, I was wondering what presentation she's going to have for us. But I haven't listened to her in the last 1 hour thereabout. You're not hearing me.
We can hear you, sir. Just carry on. I think we can. At least we are picking bits and pieces of it.
You're not hearing me. Okay, don't worry, I'll get back to you people again. Give me the special name. Let me go.
Oh, we didn't get that end.
Okay, I've muted his mic. His network is really bad.
Hello?
I think we'll just wait.
I got some part of it, but we didn't get everything.
Okay. So
I don't know if it was a question. Sir, can you maybe drop a text in the chat box?
Yes, maybe you should drop a text, or maybe we come back to him. Perhaps his network will be better. Any other person, please?
Please, I have a question.
Why didn't you raise your hand? I will gulag you now.
I didn't know we're supposed to raise hand now.
Oh yeah, go ahead with your question.
Okay. Please, in the case of that example you gave about someone saying they don't know how to insert penis inside vagina, if that person was a visually impaired person, how do you help the person?
Sorry, say that again. If that person was a
visually impaired person, how do you help that person? How do you educate? Because normally recited is very easy for them to probably watch porn.
Yes.
So they learn a lot of things from that. But for a visually person that cannot watch porn, all we do is read romance novels, and there are so many of those novels don't go exactly in depth. They don't tell you what to do. So how do you educate such a person?
Okay, so this exact question you asked, the person that told me about it, I asked the person the same question. So what that person did was, there are organizations, right, that do reproductive health programs, and they have these vaginal and penile models that have been designed, right? That they use to do what's it called? They use them to do condom condom demonstration sessions. Lara, you remember when we did the HIV
Yeah, sure.
training? We had those. So if you know of, you can obviously research online and find those kind of organizations, and get in touch with them, and they'll be able to provide that practical knowledge. Because for us, we have to touch. We have to touch for us to be able to really get an understanding of what it is. If you just describe for me that it's one long something like this, I might not be able to get that vivid understanding unless I kind of touch it. So that would be a way around it, getting an organization or an organization that would have those penile models to be able to, show such a person and then educate the person. Because if such people fall into wrong hands, they will take advantage of them at the end of the day. So I think that's just the only practical way I know that you can get that done. Because even if you go and tell a family member, you have family members that have been the ones abusing how do you tell a family member to come and surrender their penis for somebody?
I laugh in Spanish.
So exactly. So it's not exactly, I'll tell us a very funny story. So I was like 21 or 22. And my cousins in the house are started dating and all that. And they'll talk about how they kiss their boyfriends. And I'm like, so how do people kiss? And then my sister said, you see, this is what I could show you now. This is what I could show you now that showed you, but I will spread the experience for you. I want you to experience it by yourself. Plus, it doesn't make sense. And until I was able to express it by myself, I have to live with the explanations that they gave me, about it. So, I mean, those kind of things happen, So asking a family member to surrender, that might be exposing such a person to more evil. So the only easiest and practical way to go about it to help such a person is really to look for organizations that are working around reproductive health, and they can get penile and vaginal model, which is what that person did. So the person connected the lady to an organization, and they really took her through, showed her different, they showed her a penile model, and gave her very detailed information that she needed to know about how reproductive organs and all that. Yeah. So that's the only practical solution I can give. Probably if other people have better solutions, but I mean, I don't know what other better solution will be there.
Maybe they could just go ahead and get a partner to practice with.
Yeah, or if they have a partner and it's consensual, and such a person consents to taking them through it, then that's also not a bad suggestion. That's another very practical suggestion.
Yeah, so Kudirat Amuda wants to ask a question. Unmute your mic, please.
Yeah, mine is not a question though. I just wanted to show appreciation to our sexists in the house.
Hey,
yay! I am coming for you.
She studied sexology.
Therapy. Hey God.
Studied sexology.
So I wanted to tell her a very big thank you for enlightening at least most of us. And on a lighter mode, Bumi, for such a person, we could get a volunteer who would volunteer to show his own.
What is that?
That was difficult to
Would you mind being a volunteer for somebody like that?
More natural.
Would you mind being Can you
Would you mind being a volunteer for someone like that?
And you pay me in millions.
That kind of volunteer is hard. We are talking about safety. Well, if it's a volunteer that is happy to do without asking for any extra too, well, there can have some volunteers that will be happy to volunteer themselves, provided that if anything goes further than that, it is consensual. So
which is likely. So I think we should just go back to Pastor Goke Sir, you can unmute now. Hopefully your network is better. Hello, sir.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, it's better now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually in a neighbor's house. I had to come back to my own house for clarity. I was saying that I was just going to find out which profession Ejiro is into.
Ejiro, did you get that?
Following our presentation, she seemed to be very vast in the field of the topic we are supposed to look at. Like, what's she going to tell us? Is she into medicals? Is she into health services? Are you there?
Okay, I think I understand the question. I mean, I'm not yet a sexologist, so I'm not yet a sexologist. So, sir, okay. So, yes, I got the question.
Hello.
Yes. I'm not a sexist, though. So.
Hello, madam.
Fashoro, please mute yourself.
Okay, hold on.
Come to you.
Let me respond
mute
to
yourself.
This question.
No, let him mute. Please mute yourself.
Okay, so sir, I'm a gender and social inclusion specialist for now. And I have just picked an interest in sexuality. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, a lot of the work that I've done is around sexual and reproductive health. So that's why it seems like I have quite a vast knowledge around sexuality, sexual and reproductive health, which is SRH. But beyond SRH, I identified key gaps in Nigeria, and I think topics around sexuality is not something that much people are talking about. And like I said earlier on, I really think like that's the entry point. If we're talking about protecting women and girls or protecting persons with disabilities from gender-based violence, I think it starts from people really understanding their sexuality. So that's the reason why I focused a bit on that while I was doing my master's. And it's an area that I kind of want to carry on because it's really interesting. So there's so many angles, there's so many aspects that I want to take it further, particularly with relation to sex. I see that blind people, I'm not generalizing now, but from a lot of conversations that I have, people don't really have much information around sex. Even those in marriage, even those that are married have those issues. Non-disabled people can go to sex therapists for advice if they need one. They're able to get information online and all that. But those are not things that we really find in our community. So that's a gap, that's a need that I think is lacking in our community, and it's something that I'm really interested in. I would like to build on. So that's why I've done a bit of research around more around sexuality rather than reproductive health, more around sexuality and pleasure. And in the coming months or years, I hope to probably train as a sex therapist, and a lot of other things that comes with that. So for now, I'm just a gender and social inclusion person, expert, professional, whatever the case, whatever you call it. Okay, I hope I answered your question.
Sure, I'm sure you did. The next person is Fashoro. Can you now unmute your mic and ask your question, please? Unmute your mic, Fashoro, and ask your question. Are you there?
Oh, hold on, come back to him. Okay, he left. I think he left the call.
Okay, maybe it's network. Any other person with a question to ask? Any other person? Should I start calling names? Awiri Emmanuel, I see you. Ayola Fukoya, any question? Fashoro, you are here. Ask your question, unmute and ask your question. That question now.
Anyway, if you don't have questions, if you want to ask me privately, you can send me a message on WhatsApp. That's fine.
Okay. How do people, those that don't have your number?
You can give them my number. You can drop it in the chat box.
Can you drop message or your, maybe we can read it.
If they don't have your number, they can send a message to the president and she will pass the number across.
Ask your question. You have a question. Ask
No,
me
I don't
later.
have.
I'll not answer.
It was just a suggestion that came off my head. I don't have a question. If I have a question, I will ask her myself now. I have direct access, so.
I'll access now.
Who
is that?
The Tosin, can I talk? I want to say, chip in something briefly.
Okay, this is Fashion. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. And that person that talk about inserting of penis or not. So that would want to comment on my mom.
Okay.
So yeah, what happened is that though I'm married with twins now, but I also give a brief experience. But that person, to me,
network. The person's head has caught him knee. He was about to say,
he should try and do more research on himself more for now. Instead of the practical aspect of it, let him do the more.
I think I have an idea of what he's trying to say. Like the person should focus on themselves. But again, the essence of that story, right, is to make us understand the depth of not ignorance, the gap that exists in our community, because sometimes we just assume that we know that people know, right? But a lot of people don't know.
There's no happening.
A lot of people don't know, and they're too ashamed to ask. They're too ashamed to ask. A lot of people don't know, and they're too ashamed to ask. How does this happen? How does that happen? Somebody mentioned, okay, why don't they try it out with a partner? What if they end up, because they don't know, and they end up with a partner who happens not to be a nice partner or a good person, and the person leverages on that ignorance and just, gives them a bad experience? Then that automatically shapes how they experience. It shapes their sexual experience or their sexual life going forward, except they're able to now deal with it, or they're lucky to find somebody who create a positive experience. So yeah, it's important that I really think that there's a need to create very good safe spaces, either for only men or for only blind and partially sighted women, for only blind and partially sighted men, because I see that I'm sure that a lot of people have questions, but that's all. Let me not come and ask. Let them see that I'm a spoiled person, I'm a bad person. I remember that there was a time we were doing this SRH on NAB WhatsApp group every Sunday, and certain people that are saying, this SRA people, they want to come and corrupt us. They will be saying bad things. And the day we brought a medical person on the page, on the group to for people to ask questions, the medical doctor was just sending me private messages. He said, your people are sending me private messages. I can tell them to ask the question on the group. They refused to ask the questions on the group, but they were asking him privately. So that's to tell you that people want information, but they don't know how. And it's this fear of being judged or being, labeled in giving negative labels. We are bad, we are loose, we are spoiled, So it's time for us to own our sexuality, and it's time for us to express it unashamedly without any apology to anyone. If I feel like wearing a short skirt, I will wear it, and I'm not going to apologize to anybody. That's how I feel at that moment. If I feel like kissing a guy, I'll kiss him without apologizing to anybody. That's what I want to do. But again, it just has to be that I have to be in control. I have to be able to say, this is what I want, and stand for what I want, rather than having people dictate what they want to do with me, or how they want me to, behave or act. So yeah, that's what I think. That and it's only when we keep talking, it's only when we create room for people to ask these kind of questions, that's the only time that we'll be able to get people to get information that can help them make informed decisions or make right choices.
Okay. Somebody else has a question.
Hello,
Singora, or what?
Hello, can I continue? I just come
Hi,
back
it's
now.
me.
Sorry, please hold on. I thought you already said what you wanted to say, Fashoro. Abby, any other thing? Do you have a question
because
to
that's
ask?
what I
Maybe you
think
should
you
go
wanted
ahead.
to say.
Are you there? Or your network?
Network is really bad.
Your village people don't want you to talk. Oh, it's not me. Please, Singora.
Is it me?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
we were talking to you. Hold on, please, a little. Mr. Tosin Fashoro, can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yes. I'm
Okay,
back
please
now. Yes.
complete your statement or question.
So I want to just make a brief example of myself. That before I got married, I did a lot of research on that aspect of sexual. Well, that no matter how holy I am, no matter how careful I am, I will see. It will see. It will tell me that all those things will common. So I make session research. I ask questions. I listen to programs that talk about such things. Though I have the knowledge, but when it comes to the physical experience, zero. When I got married, I appreciate that I got married to a person who is mature and understand the kind of person she's getting married to. So she said I could do that. So when I was like, the first night was terrible. Because I'm confused. All what I learned is as if but with time, we have to understand the integrity, the let and breath, everything, and till now, I'm happy, everything's going fine. At least I tell you, I have twins with it. So,
You're not a pro.
So that I'm a good scorer.
That's
and
good.
thank you for sharing, Mr. Tosin. I really think that.
So thank you very much.
He's not a professor.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it really validates a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that there are so many other people like you can create if we have this kind of safe spaces and people like you can share with other men, with other blind and partially sighted men who may be in your shoes that do not really understand, it will go a long way. That you said you asked people, you were fortunate to have people to ask.
Okay. Ejiro, are you there?
Oh no, her internet.
Village people have started with you too, Ejiro. We cannot hear you.
Internet is bad.
Yeah, network is bad.
So bad.
Let's just hold on a bit. If you want to ask questions, put on your.
I think Victoria wanted to ask a question just now.
I wanted to say something.
Okay, is your name Victoria? Just hold on.
Yeah, my name is. Sorry, it's my phone that kind of displays as single there, but it's Victoria.
Oh, okay, sorry. Let her come back.
Yeah,
please, any other person, just use the raised hand option.
She didn't say she wanted to ask a question. I think she said she wanted to make a comment, I think.
Okay, is it a comment?
Yeah, just a comment about, everything that's been spoken about. I feel I really felt for Tosi when he was talking about his experience, because, I mean, in schools, we are given sexual education, and this is where there's a problem, where the sexual education that is being given in schools is not made to be accessible. Now, I was lucky to have gone to school in London. When I did my A-levels, I went to school in London, and it was a specialist school for blind people. And we had a day that they call a parenting and sexual education day. And they had a pregnant woman, they brought a pregnant woman who volunteered to come in. Obviously, there were a lot of boundaries put in place. We were allowed to touch her stomach. She was very close to her due date. And then they also talked to everybody about sex, and they had the model of a banana, wasn't a real one, and another fruit. And I think with the aid of those two fruits, the teacher sort of demonstrated to everyone in school how the business happens. I think that sometimes we can find those charities, but in places where those charities are very difficult to come across, as Nigeria is a very big place and people having, traveling is quite an issue. Practical things like normal things around can be used to explain to a blind person that this is how things happen. And that was what my school did. I don't know what people think about that.
Yeah, I think that's a practical, but again, it has to be in an environment where the people in that environment are willing to teach that person. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you're in a house where parents are so spiritual and they're like, what are you asking? Oh, you want to go and start learning how to have sex, Abby? Why are you asking those kind of questions? That person will just, coil back into their shell. And even if there are other questions, they might never find the courage to come out to ask them.
No, but I'm saying most disabled people will never learn about sex from their families, though. They will only ever learn about it from friends until from the general attitude. I'm just throwing that suggestion out there in case their friends.
It's a good suggestion. Yeah, it is. Yeah, at least it's very practical.
Yeah.
And doable. Thank you.
Okay.
You have a very lovely voice. I just thought that I should say that.
Come on.
What is your own? You don't want that to express our sexuality. You see, these are the people we are talking about.
I'm just appreciating God's gift.
Don't mind her.
Thank you.
Please, any other question? Maybe Ejiro, you should lots of.
I used to think once upon a time, I used to think that this thing was inborn. Just as you don't teach kids how to eat or how to suck on their mouth.
Bumi, are you asking a question? Sorry to cut you short.
No,
Emmanuel Awiri, please unmute.
No, but somebody was talking.
Emmanuel, before you, it was Bumi. Bumi, please, I will make you host. I have to leave now. So please remember to end the recording by the end of this meeting.
How do I do that? I've not done it before.
Just click on end meeting and you're fine.
Okay, the recording will automatically end.
Yes,
okay.
It will end and save.
Okay.
Does this meeting not have an end? I also have to leave.
Yeah, I think we are already out of time, but I think it's only Emmanuel now that has a question. After Emmanuel, close the room. Okay, Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay, I must say that I really appreciate the ESCO for putting this together. And I don't have a question. I just want to kind of make a contribution on this topic because it's a very interesting and a wide one. And from what I know, which I get, that a lot of people get enlightenment and take a on. is that when we talk about sex and sexuality, I think most people always get it wrong, and that's why we have a lot of high rate of unwanted pregnancy and stuff. And that is to say is that because they don't have enough education about sex, when the opportunity presents itself, they don't get to enjoy that beautiful aspect of sex. And all they just go straight into is to go into insertion, which I is a big problem because that doesn't make you understand yourself. And you have um, the full beauty of sex, love making and stuff like that. We don't get to know foreplays, no knowing of points, and because I know that you can still remain a virgin and you have experienced every other aspect of sex. But we don't have that common. We have people that the first time they will have an opportunity, they just get into, having intercourse. And then before you know it, they begin to have and so even while they have that they have a single child and they live as single parent, the child that they've given birth to, the process of giving birth to that child, they never feel enjoy what sex should be. They never have sex. So when they have discussions or they hear people talk on radio or hear people try to educate them, they feel like they've lost a lot, and maybe sometimes they may never have the opportunity of going to play back the ends of time, the play back the moment, or even not have opportunity of again, and then they are carrying child and bearing the consequences of the wrong information that they have about sex. So I think we can do a kind of evangelism. I'm not by my faith, I will not be doing, though if it comes, I don't want to. We're not getting into encouraging morality, but at the same time, when people who get to talk, we can always let people know, understand every aspect of sex, the romance and everything, at least, so you can have clamors without having sex, without having the intercourse itself. So I think is the thing that we should take up on ourselves, help people, educate them, have this discussion with your partners. You yourself, you yourself get to understand yourself, just like the speaker said. It's better you get to assess yourself and know yourself better. So
the
take your time.
The other person
yourself.
talking that is not Emmanuel, can they mute their mic?
Yeah, Mr. Pastor, please can you mute your mic?
So I think we should, even as both. Can I go on, please?
Yeah,
just
but the noise,
to round up.
Your background is a bit noisy.
Yeah, I don't know the other person. I think the other person is handling babies or something. I don't think it's from my end.
Yeah, it's
can
not
the
from
host
your end.
mute them?
Bumi, I've made you host. Please, can you mute Pashoro, please? Click on his name and then
know how
click
to.
Okay, Emmanuel, continue, please.
Okay, so just to round it up, I think I'm not really saying anything that we don't know. I think for most of us who are here, for us to be here is because we have had a level of understanding and we still want to improve our knowledge. And we find that, just as we have been saying, that so many people are pride righteous and they see that this is a dirty discussion and they shouldn't be there. I think let's take it up as a responsibility to, not that we go and start looking for those, but if at all we have parents, male or female, once in a while we get to talk about these things and let them, we educate them on a personal note. We educate, give people personal education, because when you come for a group like this, people are shy, they will shy away, and they, because of the settings, Africa that we are. So it's not peculiar to the blindfold, actually. That's just the truth. It's not peculiar to the blindfold. It's an African thing. So I think we should just help, in order to, reduce this spread of sexual diseases and high level of unwanted pregnancies, planned pregnancies. Even for husband and wife, even those who are married, immediately they just side themselves naked. The next thing they are going to is penetration. So I think it's a problem, and I will really encourage that we take it up and do on a personal level education on with our friends and loved ones. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the
Okay.
experts once again.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I just want to pick one or two things from what you said. So I struggle with it when people use, people refer to sex as dirty or immoral, and I think a lot of times is this different labeling of it as a bad thing. That's where I think that's why, when they say when things that are done in secret, it's difficult to, like when there's a lot of secrecy around the thing, then it makes it difficult to kind of really get to the root of it. I mean, to me, I believe that sex was given to humanity as a gift. So it depends on what context you use it, right? And that's the reason why information is key, because it's left for me, the individual, now to decide, to say, based on my values, based on my belief, based on this or that, I don't want to have sex. But if again, I choose based on whatever shapes me as a person, I choose to, I shouldn't be castigated as a bad person, as immoral. It just stems from my belief and my values. I shouldn't be castigated as immoral or a promiscuous person, because I think a lot of times that's where people don't get to share, and even just verbalizing your fantasies and your desires, it helps you to be able to put life and things in perspective. But how many of us are even able to tell somebody what we're thinking in our mind? It is for as many people that are not having sex, they are thinking about it. They fantasize about it. If we had to do a survey of 10 people, at least 9 people fantasize or think about it, because we are human beings. We're sexual beings. We have hormones in our system, in our bodies, So it's a natural thing. So it's you that will just decide what is the right time, what is not the right time to have sex. And I think that's why we need to even begin to teach our younger children. So, and then give them their consequences. For every action, there's a reaction. For every decision you take, there's a consequence. So when you teach them, this is what sex is, these are the implications. So it's like for that person to take a decision to say, I want to, I don't want to. I'm ready to, deal with the consequences, or I'm ready to deal with the implications that comes with it. But keeping them totally away from it, that's where the danger is. Because that person, that adolescent or that young person, or even like you said now, sometimes we even grow up into adulthood and we get into marriage with dysfunctional information, dysfunctional knowledge of, okay, imagine if it doesn't even marry an understanding woman, it would have been a problem. So we need to give that information, and I agree with you, but in a non-judgmental way, so that people can be open and people can embrace the information. So that's what I will add to what you said, giving that information in a non-judgmental way.
Yep. Non-judgmental way. Sorry. Okay, so I think this is where
Network has already told her that.
Yeah, but me, you wanted to say something?
I said network. Even her network wants us to end the meeting.
Yeah, don't mind. So I hope we've actually all learned something, from the very beginning, from the word sexuality to the word safety, back to the attribute of sex, and what have you, as sex has to do with your intimacy, behavior, and all of that, and where and when it comes to be safety, as we all are sexual beings, right? So, and we've also learned about the processes, that when or how we can talk about, or what it means to, be verbal about sexuality. It's actually a very, very, nice time out here, virtually, even though the coronavirus is trying to play Iggy Haga, but no, we actually have to learn. And please, I would like us to put this at the on our left palm, that regardless of your visual impairment, right? One thing you need to put to perspective, put to place first, is that one, you are a human, and because you are a human, you are a sexual being, right? Just like the what's that word now? Just like Miss Ejiro have said, we are all sexual beings, and please do not also misuse your knowledge of sexuality or your knowledge about sex as well. So I hope we will learn and we've enjoyed ourselves.
Why is it on our left palm that we should put it?
What do you say?
Why is it on our left palm that we should put it? Why not our right?
Because you can use your right. Okay, some can be southpaw. You can use our right to eat. So when you put it on your left palm, you won't be
Someone
be
who's left-handed don't go.
That's what I'm saying. That some people are southpaw. So all right. Please just keep it safe somewhere there. And thank you very much for joining us today. Definitely make it a date with us next month, the 7th month in the year 2021.
Keep it safe.
Yes,
play safe for Joe.
Who is that? Okay, Mr. Fasher. Definitely.
Yes. So keep it safe.
It's very, very important. Because you're blind doesn't mean you
stop gathering knowledge alone. Please learn to put into practice. Stop gathering enough knowledge. You have too much knowledge. Let's put our knowledge to use. Please, it's important.
No.
Yes.
When you are married. When you are married, you cannot do that.
Please get married now. Get married soon. Get married.
Is it by force?
Knowledge. It's close to just it's a plead. Joe.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining in today's conversation. Thank you,
please.
Thank you, everyone,
people.
and hope to see you. Hope to see you next episode, which is going to be next month, July 2021. God's grace. Until then, it is adios. Au revoir, buddy.
Good night, everybody. The meeting is over. You people can leave.
No.
I'm about to end the recording.
End the meeting.
Hope nobody wants to do fellowship after fellowship. I'm about to end the meeting.
What's wrong with you, Bumi? Are you cold?
I'm not well. I'm sick.
Bele. God be with you, Bele.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Nice being here.
All right, guys.